Pleased to be joined now from college football writer at ESPN.com, Big East blogger as well, friend of the show. Andrea Adelson joins us here on the New Sentinel Sports page. Hey, Andrea, Vince Ferrara, Brendan Quinn. How you doing this morning, Andrea?
Doing great, guys. Thanks for having me again.
Well, we appreciate you doing it and certainly wanted to get your perspective on Butch Jones. First, what was your thought on Butch Jones being named the head coach of Tennessee?
Well, honestly, I was not surprised to see the news, and I think he's a great coach. When you take a look at what he's been able to do at Cincinnati, I know there was some grumbling among Vols fans because his team was one that Tennessee beat pretty handily last year. But after that game, Cincinnati really got things on the right track. They've been able to win a share of the Big East the last couple of years. And there's one thing about this team that you could never question, and that's their toughness and their commitment to Butch Jones. They loved him. They loved playing for him. He instilled this idea that they're all together, they're a family, and everything they do in the practice field in the offseason reflects directly on how they end up performing in games. And when you take a look at what they did this year, losing Big East Offensive Player of the Year, Isaiah P. Big East Defensive Player of the Year, Derek Wolfe, their leading tackler, and J.K. Schaefer, their starting quarterback. They were still able to win a share of the Big East, and I quite frankly think this was his best coaching job at Cincinnati.
And Andrew, I guess for everyone down here who really didn't see his tenure kind of unfold, I guess so many people talk about his record at Cincinnati, and a lot of that is kind of skewed by that first year. Off the top of my head, I think it's 4-8. I want to say is what he went his first year. Yeah, kind of skews that career record when he was there. But what are your thoughts on the job that he did over those 3 years, from what he inherited to Brian Kelly to what he now leaves behind? Kind of the overall condition of the program.
Well, he would be the first to tell you that 4-8 season, there were a lot of personnel issues, and he won't go and list them all, but there were things that he needed to get cleaned up, so to speak, in terms of character and getting players' minds right to focus in on what he was preaching. He kind of had a divided team that year, from Brian Kelly to him taking over and essentially doing things completely and radically different. But these last 2 years, with the players who have bought in, they've all bought in to what he wanted to do, and they started seeing the results of him kind of preaching this whole family together, aggressive, tough mentality. Cincinnati was a team when Brian Kelly was there that aired the ball out and that ran the spread, and Butch had done that in the past. But when you look at the last 2 years, Cincinnati was really a running football team primarily. When you look at the run game with Isaiah P. last year, George Wynn this year, 2 1,000-yard rushers the last 2 seasons, and the quarterback was more of a complimentary figure. So he kind of saw what the strengths were on his team. He was able to go that route. Defensively, they were extremely aggressive up front. They were able to get pressure with just their 4-man front. They also blitzed sometimes, but for the most part, they really played well with the 4 guys they had up front. They were able to get a nice rotation going, build some depth along the defensive line. And last year, they were among the leaders in the nation in sacks and tackles for loss. This year, they had a lot of sacks and tackles for loss as well, even though they lost the heart of their defensive line with their 2 starting defensive tackles. So, again, the trademark, if you want to look at the last couple of years, has been a grinded-out, hard-nosed team, a tough team, and a team that refused to quit, play together, and kind of bought into everything that he was selling.
We're joined by Andrea Adelson from ESPN.com, college football writer, Big East blogger, covered Butch Jones at Cincinnati. Joining us here on the New Sentinel Sports page, Vince Ferrara, Brendan Quinn. What do you think of his staff at Cincinnati? Because it seems like a good many of them are going to join him here in Tennessee.
Well, obviously, I think they did a great job, particularly this year. When you take a look at all of the players that they lost about 20 seniors off of the team last year, a lot of starters, and Butch, every single conference call this year, I can tell you, repeated the same thing over and over. He had 65 first and second year players on this roster. A lot of them were starters. And so for me, to see the staff be able to get these guys in position to not only take over for all of these productive seniors, but then to get them be as productive themselves. Let's take a look at middle linebacker Greg Blair, for example. This kid was coming off major knee problems. He'd never done a thing in his career at Cincinnati. He was overweight. He was playing behind one of their best players of all time. And this year he's able to step in, get over 100 tackles, and be one of the best players in the Big East and win all Big East conference selection, first team. That, to me, speaks volumes about the coaching staff, the way they're able to get these guys prepared, and not only to be starters, but to be productive. There's so many players like him. Tight end Travis Kelce now has made himself an NFL draft pick because of his success this year. George Wynn, over 1,000 yards. He was a spot player his whole career at Cincinnati. So you go on, and I think that just speaks volumes, not just about Butch, but about the staff that he had to get these guys ready to go and to lead Cincinnati to another Big East championship this year.
Now, Andrew, I don't know if you read Paul Doherty's column on the Cincinnati Enquirer about the image that Butch had kind of portrayed there of being 100% committed and he wasn't going anywhere, and said at the Belk Bowl that by him still being the coach at Cincinnati, it spoke volumes about his commitment to the family that he had built there. And then essentially 48 hours, a few days later, he's whisked up and gone, and now in Knoxville. You don't even have to necessarily respond to the column, but I'm just kind of curious of your thoughts on that, because he does talk about the commitment and the family and this and that, and then, well, when it came down to it, he took the better job.
Well, he's not the first coach who said that, and he's not the last coach who's going to say that. I honestly believe when he made those statements, I think it was on a Tuesday, he was going to be back at Cincinnati. And from everything that I've heard, even from their athletic director, Whit Babcock, who gave an unbelievable press conference announcing Butch Jones's resignation last week, he went detail by detail on how the last week unfolded, from him interviewing at Purdue and Colorado, and the day that Charlie Strong turned down Tennessee. Butch Jones told him that morning, I am staying at Cincinnati, I am turning down Colorado. And then in a matter of moments, Whit Babcock's cell phone rang, and it was Dave Hart saying, we want to interview Butch Jones. So at that point in time, I don't think Butch thought Tennessee was an option for him. And then moving forward, as we started talking to them, and Whit Babcock, the Cincinnati AD, wanted an answer. He said, you're not taking this more than 24 hours. We need to know something from you. And sure enough, he told him on Friday morning he was leaving. But again, I think Purdue and Colorado were not as good a jobs as he had at Cincinnati. So I saw why he turned those down. Tennessee is a way better job in a way better conference that is the number one conference in America. Cincinnati was trying to get out of the Big East, unable to get out of the Big East, and now they're stuck in a conference that has no guaranteed tie-in into a bowl game, the future playoff, and is going to have an incredibly difficult time even getting into a playoff if they go undefeated. His stadium, he couldn't even fill 35,000 seats. Now he's getting Neyland. So I just think it was a no-brainer decision on the Tennessee part. But earlier in the week, I really think he thought he was staying at Cincinnati.
Joined by Andrea Adelson from ESPN. Andrea, what are some of the possible concerns you might have, or at least questions about Butch Jones at Tennessee? And then what do you think are the things that could really, really work out well for Tennessee with Butch Jones as coach?
A couple of concerns. First is that he's never coached in a conference as strong as the SEC. And while he does have some ties to the area, because Cincinnati is right on the border with Kentucky and close enough to Louisville, so he's got those ties. But I wonder about making the inroads into the areas where Tennessee really needs to make inroads to bring in some of the talent. Not only that, in his last two jobs, he did inherit a roster stock full of great players that Brian Kelly had brought in. So what does the Tennessee roster look like now compared to kind of what he had going in? I think that's the biggest concern folks have brought up, is that he's kind of ridden Brian Kelly's coattails in the last two jobs. He doesn't have that at Tennessee. So to me, those are a couple concerns. But I think what could work well for him is he already plays with an SEC-type mentality. His defenses did anyway, and you know that you need to have a strong defense in order to win in the SEC. When you take a look at what the other SEC teams have done, you take a look at Florida, which is one of the main rivals for Tennessee in the East, and the kind of coach that they had there. I know Butch has kind of made his name with offense, but the last 2 years, I think his defense has been one of the best in the Big East. Again, very aggressive and physical. That's what you need in order to play in the SEC. So I think that's a huge benefit that he has going for him, that and his ability to kind of shape his teams around the personnel that he has. He's not afraid to run the ball and to pound the ball, and that's a very characteristic of teams in the SEC as well, teams that have won. So I think when you're looking at it from that perspective, when you look at the kinds of things he was able to do at Cincinnati and the mindset and the way they played, I think that fans should kind of see that as an advantage and as a positive as he begins to make this transition.
You can find more Andrea's work, ESPN.com, and the Big East blog, college football writer for ESPN.com. Andrea, great to visit with you. Thank you so much for your perspective on Butch Jones. I know it was very informative for the Vols fans, and thank you so much. Great to talk to you as always.
Yeah, same here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks. That's Andrea Adelson, nice enough to join us here with some perspective on Butch Jones.